Snow Queen. Once upon a time, there was a little boy called Kay and a little girl called Gerda. They lived next door to each other and were the very best of friends. But before you hear their story, you should know about a very wicked imp who made a magic mirror. Everything good reflected in it shriveled up and looked ugly, and everything evil looked large and wonderful. One day, the imp decided to fly up to heaven with the mirror and make fun of God and all the angels. But as he soared high in the sky, he dropped the mirror and it shattered into trillions of pieces that flew everywhere. Whoever got a speck in their eye saw everything good as bad, and those whose hearts were pierced by a splinter became truly wicked. One summer's day, Kay and Gerda were sitting in a rose garden when Kay suddenly felt a pain in his heart.
Oh!
And then,
Ow! I think I've got something in my eye,
he said. Gerda couldn't see anything, but it was in fact a speck from the imp's mirror. The pain quickly went, but the splinter was certainly there, and it wouldn't be long before Kay's heart was turned to a lump of ice. Kay made fun of the townspeople and even teased little Gerda. He wouldn't read books with her. He thought it was baby stuff. He preferred scientific games. One day he showed Gerda a snowflake under a magnifying glass.
Look how perfect it is! Much prettier than a real flower. If only it didn't have to melt.
Later, Kay left Gerda on her own and took his sledge out into the snow. The bravest boys used to tie their sledges to the back of farm carts and be pulled along for an exciting ride. Now Kay noticed a magnificent sledge pulled by white horses and carrying a woman muffled in a white cloak and hood. Quickly, he tied his sledge to the back. Off they rushed into the snow. At first, Kay was enjoying himself, but then the snow got thicker and thicker. He tried to shout out, but couldn't be heard. Suddenly, they came to a halt. When the woman stood up, Kay could see that her white cloak and hood were all made of snow. She was tall, slender, and dazzlingly white. He realized that she was the Snow Queen herself. "Come into the sledge," she told Kay, "and warm yourself under my cloak." She kissed Kay's forehead. At first, it felt piercingly cold, and all of a sudden, he didn't feel cold at all. One more kiss, and Kay forgot all about Gerda and his home in the city. Away they flew over icy lands. Kay thought his queen was beautiful and perfect, and he wasn't in the least bit afraid. Gerda wept for her lost friend Kay. When the spring came, she decided to go to the river and ask if it knew where Kay was. She took her new red shoes with her. "Here are my shoes," she called to the river as she threw them in. "You can have them if you tell me what you've done with my friend." But the shoes came floating back. Gerda found a little boat, but as she stepped into it and threw her shoes again, the boat floated away. Gerda was very scared as she sailed far away from her home. When she saw a cottage on the bank, she cried out. An old woman, wearing a hat covered in flowers, heard her cries, hurried out and hooked the boat. "Poor little girl," crooned the old woman, "so far from home with no shoes. Come and eat and tell me your tale." As Gerda ate, she talked about Kay, and the old woman combed her hair. "What a pretty girl, and what a good companion you'll make." As the old woman combed, Gerda forgot all about Kay and her home. The old woman was wily and had a few magic powers. She thought that if Gerda saw the roses in her garden, she would remember her home and her quest to find Kay. So, using her magic stick, she made the roses disappear. Many days passed, and Gerda spent them playing happily in the garden. Then one day, she noticed a beautiful rose in the old lady's hat, and all her memories came flooding back. She rushed from the garden, asking all the flowers and animals, "Oh, have you seen my friend Kay? Can you help me find him?" Then a large black raven gave her some hope.
"Caw!" he cried out. "I might know the boy you're looking for, although he's a prince now and lives in the palace with the princess."
The raven told Gerda that this boy had won the princess with his lively and confident manner. "Oh yes," cried Gerda, "that sounds just like my Kay."
"Well," replied the raven, "my sweetheart lives in the palace. Maybe she can help."
The raven flew off to the palace. When he returned, he took Gerda to a small side entrance where his sweetheart was waiting.
"My betrothed has told me your story,"
she told Gerda.
"I hope I'll be able to help."
She led Gerda up some dark stairs and into a magnificent room. In the room were 2 beds in the shape of lilies. In one slept the prince, and in the other the princess. Carefully, Gerda pulled back the covers from the prince's bed. His face was turned away, but she saw his brown hair and cried out, "Kay!" The prince was woken by the cry, and as he sat up, Gerda burst into tears, realizing it was not her precious Kay. The princess also sat up, and they demanded to know what Gerda was doing in their room. In between her sobs, she told them her sorry tale, finishing with how the ravens had guided her. The prince and princess were so upset by her story, they promised to give her new clothes and a carriage for her journey, and they rewarded the ravens as well. The next morning, dressed from top to toe in silk and driving in a golden carriage, Gerda was waved off on her journey by the kind prince and princess. The ravens flew along with Gerda for a short way, and then they bid each other a tearful farewell. Gerda's carriage had been filled with all sorts of good food and sweets by the royal couple. She was in the lap of luxury as she sped along in the jewel-encrusted carriage. The golden carriage shone so brightly that it quite dazzled the band of robbers who were hiding in the woods. "It's gold! It's gold!" they cried out, and rushed out of their hiding place in the woods to attack the coach. They dragged poor Gerda out of the coach.
"What a plump little girl,"
said an old robber woman, pinching poor Gerda hard.
"What a tasty meal she'll make."
She pulled out a sharp knife that glinted in the sun. Poor Gerda thought her journey was over forever, when suddenly the robber woman screeched with pain and let Gerda go. The robber woman's little girl had bitten her mother really hard.
Get off her!
She screeched at her mother.
You're not to kill her. She's going to be my friend.
And the little robber girl was so sulky and willful that she got her way. She made Gerda give her her warm boots and her muff, and then away they drove in the carriage.
Don't worry,
said the little robber girl.
I shan't let her kill you. Not unless you make me angry, of course.
When they got to the robber's den, the little robber girl took Gerda into her room. In the room were many hundreds of pigeons.
They're all mine,
boasted the robber girl. She pulled a beautiful reindeer from the shadows.
I'll keep him tied to the wall, and every night I'll tickle his throat with my knife, just to show who's master.
Then she turned to the frightened Gerda and demanded,
Now, tell me your story.
With tears in her eyes, Gerda told the little robber girl all about Kay. Later, when the robber girl was asleep, the wood pigeons spoke up.
We've seen Kay. Oh, tell me, please, where is he? Begged Gerda. He went past us, riding in the Snow Queen's carriage. We were lucky to escape her icy breath. Many of our friends died. She must have been making for her summer palace in Lapland.
In the morning, Gerda told the robber girl the story. The girl turned to the reindeer.
Do you know where Lapland is?
She asked. Of course, he replied.
Then you shall carry Gerda on her journey.
The reindeer was delighted to be free, and the little robber girl even gave Gerda back her warm boots before sneaking her out of the robbers' camp. Away they sped over the snow. In the distant sky, Gerda could see flashes of red, accompanied by great hisses and crackles. Those are the northern lights, the reindeer told her. Aren't they beautiful? Finally, they came to a very tiny house, and inside was a Lapp woman. The reindeer told the woman Gerda's story, and she listened carefully. You poor thing, she said to Gerda. You must eat, drink, and warm yourself, because you have a long way to go yet. You must travel to Finnmark, where the Snow Queen's palace is. I will write a few words on a piece of dried codfish. I have no paper, and you can take it to a Finn woman who lives there. She will know better what you should do. So, after a good rest, Gerda and the reindeer set off again. They travelled a long way before they spotted the smoke from the Finn woman's chimney. Inside the house it was sweltering hot, and the first thing the Finn woman did was to loosen Gerda's clothing and take off her boots to dry. Gerda gave the woman the message written on the codfish, and the reindeer told her Gerda's story. The Finn woman read the message 3 times until she had it off by heart, and then dropped the codfish into the pot, because she never wasted anything. Then she unravelled an ancient parchment and studied the strange words that were written there. You're so wise, said the reindeer, flattering the woman. Please help Gerda to save Kay. The Finn woman took the reindeer aside. Little Kay is with the Snow Queen at her palace, she told him. He thinks it's a fine place to be, but this is because he has a splinter of glass in his heart and another in his eye. They must be removed, or he will stay bewitched forever. Can't you give Gerda something to break the spell? The reindeer pleaded. The woman sighed. Don't you realize that Gerda's greatest power comes from her innocent and good heart? She must be the one to go into the Snow Queen's palace and free Kay. Now you must take her to the edge of the Snow Queen's garden. So once more, Gerda mounted the reindeer, and they sped off. It wasn't until they were well on their way that Gerda realized she had forgotten her warm boots. The reindeer took Gerda to the edge of the palace garden. Huge tears ran down his nose as he said goodbye. Gerda started forward, but was halted by a mass of snowflakes. These flakes made up all sorts of weird shapes, and they were in fact the Snow Queen's guards. They surrounded Gerda, and terrified, she began to repeat the Lord's Prayer. Her breath turned icy as she spoke, and from this icy cloud, little bright angels formed. They rushed at the guards and smashed them into a million pieces. Gerda was safe and free to go on her way. Inside the Snow Palace, Kay sat in the center of a frozen lake. He was trying to solve a puzzle the Snow Queen had set him. If he could spell out the word eternity in pieces of ice, he would be free to be his own master, and the Queen would give him the whole world and a new pair of skates as well. But try as he might, he couldn't manage the task. When Gerda entered the hall, she saw Kay sitting by the throne. She ran across the frozen lake, weeping with joy, and threw her arms around his neck.
Oh dear little Kay, I've found you at last. As she hugged him, her tears fell on his chest and reached right through to his heart. In a moment, the ice around his heart melted, washing away the splinter of glass. He turned to Gerda, and as she sang a favourite verse they had both sung in happier times, he too began to cry, and with his tears, the splinter of glass fell from his eye. Now he could recognise his dear friend. "Oh, Gerda," he cried, "where have you been? How cold and empty it is here." Their happiness was so great, the very ice began dancing for joy. And when it lay down again, it spelled out the word eternity. Now there was no reason at all to worry. Kay was free to go, and the Snow Queen no longer had any power over him. Hand in hand, Gerda and Kay walked out of the Snow Queen's palace. Everywhere they passed, the bitter winter wind stopped whistling, and the sun burst forth, and with it, all the good things of spring. At the garden's edge, the reindeer was waiting with a friend to carry the children back. Before they reached their hometown, they met the little robber girl riding a magnificent horse. "I've decided to go travelling," she told them. Then turning to Kay, she said, "I wonder if you deserve such a good friend who travels to the very ends of the earth for you." Then off she went. Kay and Gerda went on their way, back to their town and back to their homes. All was how they had left it, but they were older and wiser now. The Snow Palace was just a distant dream to them as they sat together in the warm summer sun.